Hey, welcome everybody for another episode of Tokenomics and DAX with EOS Ignite. Here with Justin Giudici, infinitybloc. Always great to have him here. Another. I think we had a great episode last week talking about the tokenomics of Poker Kings, and we kind of talked earlier about discussing another up and coming project, Liquidapps. And so I think it'd be great to take a look at their tokenomics and their white paper and just start a discussion. What do you think, Justin?
Yeah, that sounds great. Sounds great.
Okay. So for those that don't know, Liquidapps website is liquidapps.io. Justin, maybe if you could give me a summary of what Liquidapps is. I think I think you're more familiar than I am, so it'd be great to know more.
A little bit. I'm still kind of getting my head around what it is, but basically it allows developers to extend their use of kind of storage beyond what you can currently use, which is the RAM on the blockchain. So one of the big issues with blockchains, or at least the EOSIO blockchain, is that you only have a limited amount of RAM that is available. I think at the moment it's set at 128 gigs on EOS, and on Telos I believe it's at 32 gigs at the moment. But basically, if you want to build kind of more complicated applications, they're going to require a lot more storage than is currently available. And by using Liquidapps, which is sort of another layer of basically of tools and assets that you can get access to, starting with what they're calling VRAM. So VRAM is an extension of the memory that you get on EOS or any other EOSIO blockchain. And basically, I think how it works is it works sort of like a swap file, in that it allows your smart contracts to grab from Liquidapps like more information and more storage data. So it can like swap out files as they're needed into the RAM that the application itself owns. So that allows it to scale to almost unlimited amounts of storage. And so the concept actually has, what do they call them? DPSs, I think. I know they're providers, DSPs, sorry. They're decentralized service providers, I believe. So they're basically mainly block producers at the moment who can provide these services like VRAM. Anyway, we should probably like jump into the white paper, I guess, and go through it, or get onto the website.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to share your screen, or I could do the same thing? The website is liquidapps.io. There's a
maybe you could, just because my Wi-Fi has been a bit flaky.
Okay. So let's get to that. So let's go to the Liquidapps. I was just scrolling through. Landed here at the Dapp token model and allocation, but this is the website. Build better tools, products with Liquidapps, and we could go to the white paper. Do you want to just skip there? There is a section on what you call DSPs, data service providers. Is it?
We can briefly go through the site if there's any.
So, so Liquidapps vision, dApps of today, daily active users today are a number in the tens of thousands.
I'm just waiting for it to sort of not super clear. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Jun,
you
seem to have dropped out.
Oh. Can you hear me, guys, out there? Or is it just Justin? Okay, so Justin, can you hear me? So I mean,
It is
just
just
okay. So okay, so let me say I can hear you. I can hear you, Justin.
and come back and see if it fixes for me.
So
Okay, I'll drop out and then come back.
yeah, there's sometimes I guess there's some issues with hearing. I guess guests sometimes can't hear me, and I don't know if I've had a problem hearing guests, but we'll see if he can come back in here.
Yep, that's better, I think.
Okay, you can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So so let's kind of go through the website. Just number one, the future. What's the vision? Today there's only tens of thousands of users. Tomorrow there's going to be millions of users. So it's critical. Dapps are critical. How we get here? How do we get there? Number two, introducing the Dapp network. It makes development of dApps more affordable, efficient, and scalable. There's a Dapp token. It's a multi-purpose utility token that serves to access this network. That's number two. Number three, there are live products in this Dapp network that they've created. It's the VRAM that Justin spoke about, alternative and compatible storage solution. So that's something that they've already created, and they also are building out a software development kit, SDK for developers to build on this network. Internet versus blockchain, they have a comparison. Websites are on the top layer. Dapps are on the top layer for blockchain. Liquidapps is on the platform layer, just as web services would be. So that's how, I guess, that's the parallel that they're making. A platform layer block kind of application. So and then you have the infrastructure. BPs and miners are similar to internet service providers and cloud providers. So and then the blockchain's the base layer. So we have the token model. Let me see. Total supply of billion DAPPS tokens. The generation starts today. That's very timely here. And there's a 50% of the tokens will be through a public sale. 10% would be on an airdrop. It says AirHODL, I assume, right? 10% goes to partners, 10% goes to grants, and 20% goes to the Liquidapps team, I'm assuming here.
Just to go over what that AirHODL means, I read a bit about it, and it actually means that you get but it happens over a period of, I think it was 2 years. You gradually get access to more and more of the tokens that you're sort of owed, if that's the right word, probably not. So basically, if you start selling your tokens, you will actually stop receiving your allocation. So it encourages people to not sell off the tokens that they're receiving in the airdrop of sorts. It's kind of
we should look into that. So they incentivize holding, and the more you sell early, the less you get in the long run. Essentially, is that?
Yeah. Well, if you sell early, then you stop receiving the tokens or your allocation.
Okay. So you that's okay. So once you start selling. Now, any or all, or is there, like, if you're allocated let's say X amount, and if you sell one token, does that mean you no longer get anything?
Yeah, you don't get the rest of it. It actually goes to the people who are hodling still, I believe. So over time, you might actually get more than your allocation.
Okay, interesting. And this is over a 2-year period, you're saying?
I believe it was, yes.
All right, so this is an interesting piece of this allocation. Definitely, we can look a little bit more deeply in that. And then the rest is, it's the standard, 50% public sale. It's I'm kind of curious how it's going to work with, where they're selling it and how it's going to work in this ICO environment. I'm wondering, this seems to be, they'll probably, this is a utility token. I'm sure that they're stressing, but it's good to see the details, because right now there's the ICO environment is pretty, there's just a lot of uncertainty there. So we have the Liquidapps team, advisors, a lot of people from Bancor and Liquid EOS, and some of the team members are listed here. That's pretty much it. This is the timeline. Token release 2019, Zeus release 2019, or first half of the year. IBC solution release, they're going after IBC first half of the year, and a virtual CPU release in the second half of 2019. Okay. So the VRAM release is going to be the first thing, and then they have a lot of interesting other pieces to this whole platform. I'm wondering, with the IBC solution release, how they're at the platform layer. Are they going to somehow have IBC at the platform layer rather than kind of this base protocol layer, right? That we're hearing about IBCs, and IBC is inter-blockchain communication. So we'll see what they mean by that exactly, but that's pretty much it, right?
Yeah. I'm quite curious about that as well.
Okay.
Because sorry, your speakers. Yeah, cheers. I don't know how there's an interaction between the apps and this other layer if there isn't some sort of IBC currently. So I'm kind of curious to see how that might work.
Yeah. It's, IBC can happen, I guess, outside of the blockchain, and I guess ultimately be recorded on the blockchain, but maybe at this layer you can have some sort of communication going on. Be interesting to learn more about it. So we'll go to white paper. So let's just go through the table of contents real quick. Introduction, the VRAM system that you spoke about, the Dapp service providers. 1, 2, 3 is about the VRAM. 4 is about the Dapp service providers, DSP. We have a system model, VRAM system model. We have a.
Looks like you're not sharing. The document.
Oh, really? Okay, sorry about that. Thanks for letting me know. Let me see if I have it on my other. Okay, sorry about that. So I'm going to share the. So okay, so and make it bigger. Okay. So sorry about that. So again, the overview is the first section. I'm just looking at the table of contents. The VRAM system components and operation are the next sections. Section 4 is the Dapp service providers that we talked about. The VRAM system model is page 11. Dapp distribution, token distribution mechanism, founding team, roadmap 17. Okay, it's not a large. It's not a kind of a lengthy white paper. It's only 22 pages. Maybe in terms of the tokenomics, should we kind of skip the system stuff?
Yeah.
And then just go to the. I would assume it's page 12. Is that?
That's a good point. Might be 7. Let's have a quick scroll through, and I guess we'll.
So we have an overview, what we talked about, introducing Liquidapps and the Dapp network. His mission is to promote mass-scale adoption of decentralized applications by introducing a set of technical solutions that make developing on blockchain sustainably easier and affordable. It's called the Dapp network. Okay. So it's got some information there we can read eventually, but let's just assume that, you know, you guys can go ahead and read the details. Then it talks about the VRAM system that Justin, you spoke about briefly. It just a real, like, just for people that might, just as a refresher, you know, all the information in the blockchain, all the, you know, all the table information that you have in these smart contracts, it's kind of a database, right? The blockchain, and all that information is stored on RAM on people's computers. So we're not using regular hard drives or storage devices to save, you know, to save this information. And but that increases the performance in a blockchain. It's why it's designed that way. EOS just uses computer RAM. So anyways, but then again, with that, there's some downsides, which is, you know, RAM is expensive, and the more we use of it, the more we need to store on the blockchain, the more expensive it can be developing applications. And there's some issues with that. So anyways, so that's it. So if you're a developer, you want to minimize the amount of RAM you use. You probably want to minimize, you know, like how much you want to put on the blockchain as well. That's always a good, always good to be aware of, like, what do I want to put on the blockchain? You don't have to put everything on the blockchain. Just make sure it's important and it's needed, and there's a need to put it on the blockchain. Otherwise, you probably can leave it off the blockchain. Sometimes data can be hashed, and like smaller pieces of information could be placed in the blockchain. So anyways, so that's the VRAM system. It's a way to use your storage, and as Justin said, to swap back between the RAM and your regular, you know, hard drive storage, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So let's you know, we'll kind of, these are a lot of details here. System components. It's kind of interesting. You have the token, smart contract, you have the VRAM library, you have the DSPs, which is the Dapp service providers. That's the name of it. So DSPs may offer customized service packages that include amount of storage space offered to users, server specifications, and the corresponding amount of Dapp tokens one must stake to use each package. So it's kind of a free market of providers. I think, Justin, you mentioned before about how
so it sounds like each DSP can come up with their own packages. I'm not sure what they would look like exactly. I think, well, today's the first day that you can actually take a look at them, but they don't have a UI yet. But basically, it's, say I wanted to provide IPFS storage, I could say you get 1 gig of IPFS storage at this speed, and it will cost 10 Dapp tokens, and the user has to stake 10 Dapp tokens to get access to my 1 gig of IPFS. So that's how it sort of works. And apparently, if you stake more than what you need, that also just that still goes to the DSP in terms of inflation. So the more I stake to them of the, I think it was between 1% and 5% inflation. So it's sort of like voting, but you do get something directly in return for voting, and that is a service. And yeah, the services that are available are sort of free market services.
All right. Okay. That sounds, thanks for the clarification there. So these are, this is how the DSP system works. And, you know, gigabytes of RAM, we'll see what the cost is, but it should be far lower than costs of RAM. So user contracts, operation, a lot of probably details we probably can skip here. Processing transactions with the VRAM system, cross-chain functionality. that was kind of interesting. You know, cross chain functionality. Maybe just for the heck of it, we can maybe just see how this system works with IBC. So the VRAM system can also serve as shared memory in between chains. By passing VRAM data pointers between chains, they will be available to DSPs in more than one chain. This way, once IBC is available, the VRAM system will allow infinite IBC bandwidth in addition to its core functionalities. So that's interesting. So okay. So they can, so I guess data that is stored in, let's say, the Telos blockchain and the EOS blockchain, if you use a DSP, the same DSP that whatever chain you're on, you can access the same information. You know, your smart contracts could access the same information, and somehow that they can make that work. Is that kind of how you're seeing that?
Sounds like it. If that's the case, that's quite amazing. In that it would allow kind of dApps to, you know, easily change from one blockchain to another. If there ever was like a governance issue on EOS and they wanted to pick up and leave, they could put their smart contracts on Telos instead and start running the application there. Potentially, I don't know how that would work with the users. Unless it sounds like one of the things that this VRAM solution can do is store the user data inside VRAM. That to me is quite a confusing concept. I'm not sure how it works.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what developers decide, what kind of data developers decide to store in the, and which contracts they just have permanently on the chain itself.
Yeah, that'd probably be important for interoperability. I mean, or actually just transitioning between the different systems, because you'd have to at least have you know, the smart contracts on the chains to you'd have to have the same contracts on chain to be able to use these DSPs and the VRAM, right? So it almost has to be structured in the same way on both blockchains. Otherwise, you know, it's going to be very difficult for us, you know, the smooth transitioning back and forth between the different chains, it seems. Anyways, I don't want to get too much into the technical weeds here, because it is probably over my head. So, anyway, so we'll go. Let's go a little further down. So, DSP functionality, some kind of API, Dapp network system model. It's you have to stake Dapp tokens. So maybe read this. Let's talk about this Dapp system model. Maybe that's a little bit more of the tokenomics too, right?
Yeah.
So in order to gain access to the VRAM system, Dapp developers must stake Dapp tokens in the user contracts. The amount of Dapp tokens required in each user contract should be the applicable amount of Dapp tokens needed to accommodate the Dapp's read-write needs, and should match the selected DSP package requirements. Note that the Dapp developer may stake more than the minimum amount needed in order to vote for a specific DSP. Okay. So back to the idea of voting. Can you clarify? I know you mentioned something about voting, right? Like, so when you stake these tokens, you're also making a vote for a particular DSP that you want to use their package. Is that kind of what this vote?
Yeah, I think that basically is how it works. I haven't seen it working in practice, but say infinitybloc is offering, you know, 1 gig IPFS packs. If you staked all your Dapp tokens to me, and say you had 100 and each of my packs cost 10, I guess you would gain technically access to 10 gigs. But you would also in turn be giving me a percentage of the vote. And from my understanding, and I could be completely wrong here, if I have, say, 10% of the Dapps voted, the Dapp tokens, that would mean that I would get 10% of the 1% inflation, or whatever the inflation is set to. I'd love to see like a diagram or something, but that was my interpretation of the document.
Okay, so this voting system is more.
It looks like it's set to 2.71% initially.
Okay.
So that's the day one inflation.
So okay, so I'm trying to understand the you're a DSP, you're providing these packages, and then people stake tokens in order to vote to use yours, right? Your DSP. When they do that, they also earn a part of the inflation. By is that?
I don't think they earn any of the inflation. The inflation.
Oh, okay.
So because their products are more popular than other companies,
okay. So
they will in turn receive more.
Oh, gotcha. So you're voting for the DSPs, and by virtue of voting for them, the inflation rewards the DSPs. That's how the DSPs actually earn.
I believe
okay.
so, yes.
So it's okay. So they're not. It's not like you're paying tokens directly to the service providers. You're just kind of staking it and just signaling that, hey, we're selecting you, and when you select them, then they get rewarded through the inflation. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. It's interesting.
It flips everything on its head, like the way you contract, say, Amazon AWS directly to, provide you, what's it called, S3 storage. Because, yeah, I wonder if it will end up being more expensive using this staking mechanism, given, DSPs are only getting paid a percentage of inflation. I don't know. It just like, it's totally different, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm wondering if, okay, you're selecting it and the inflation, is that like typically for any business or service, you're paying a amount, right? Based on
exactly a set rental rate or whatever you want to call it, a service fee.
And how is there going to be a disconnect, or is it going to be cheaper or more expensive, or is the free market going to maybe somehow make those equivalent? I don't know. It's interesting to see. It's also interesting to see kind of why kind of this method is used as well. Like that's how I'd have questions about. Okay, well, it's kind of it could work out. I'm just wondering like what the thinking behind that was, right? And I don't know if I'm just not thinking like at this point, but maybe we'll have to stew on it. I don't know if you have any ideas why they would do it this way rather than some kind of monthly payment mechanism where you're using the tokens to pay for things, maybe rather than, just getting the votes and getting them rewarded through inflation. So it'd be interesting to figure that out.
That's a good point.
Dapp developer may maintain, I'm on the second paragraph, multiple stakes of Dapp tokens assigned to enable service from different DSPs. So you could, this is to ensure, among other things, service redundancy for potential cases of DSP unavailability. So you can stake multiple DSPs. Makes sense.
That's a good mechanism. Like if you want storage, you might not want to just have your dApps running on one DSP's hardware, because like if one goes down or there could be data loss. But if you choose 2 or 3 and store on all 3 at once, then you have a lower chance of losing data. Because ultimately, these are sort of centralized storage systems, aren't they? It's a bit different to holding things on the blockchain RAM itself, because that blockchain RAM is holding data that is held by 100 nodes plus, like 400 on EOS at the moment, or maybe it's 300, I'm not sure exactly, but in that ballpark range. But when you're using the Dapp tokens and Liquidapps, you're actually contracting one particular company at any given time, but you have that choice of contracting multiple companies by staking your tokens to all of them.
Yeah, that does reduce your redundancy by quite a significant amount. So I assume, like you mentioned, if you're on the blockchain, you have hundreds of nodes replicating the data that you put on the blockchain. But if you use these DSPs now, you select a number of them, but that's far fewer than the hundreds that you would get. So I think maybe that's one of the one of the downsides. Is kind of interesting to just think about it. So yeah, these DSPs are kind of yeah, you're really dependent on them if they so. But we'll see about that. See what kind of, like, yeah, that's what they seem to suggest, that they're you have to select that. And I think at least for resource wise, that does make sense. Maybe you don't need the redundancy of the entire network. And it'd be interesting to see what data that you would put in VRAM versus what you wouldn't, right? I assume that you have an option of putting some things using this virtual RAM, and some things where you're always putting it in the blockchain, so you get to decide. But it may be one of those things. It's like, do you want to be off chain in VRAM or RAM on the blockchain? Right? Maybe that's the spectrum that we're looking at, and everything has a different kind of cost benefit, right?
Definitely. I assume there must be some way that some sort of hash of the data to validate that, the data that the chain was pointing to is valid data, and, one of these DSPs hasn't just changed the data.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where they talk about that, but there must be some way that they can validate that data is what it should be.
We might have skipped that.
Yeah,
there's probably some kind of this one here, like this diagram here that has some sort of signature and hashing system, maybe. But anyways.
So it does retain that type of immutability, I'm assuming. But then there's the type of immutability that's like, can the data be lost completely?
Yeah. So you could verify that you could get from the VRAM to the RAM with integrity, but it doesn't mean it doesn't mean that you'll have it available. Like a DSP could go down, I assume, and just quit the network. I don't know. So that's interesting. That's an interesting point. So. So let's see. The next paragraph is about the Dapp token. Smart contract generates new tokens at a rate of 1 to 5%. Let me see. It allocates the inflation to the DSP's pro rata to the amount of Dapp tokens staked and assigned to the DSP. So people vote by staking, and that determines the rewards for the DSPs. There's some details about that. They have something called a cycle basis, and I think there was some definition of a cycle before. It's like, what was it, 333 days or something like that I read. Anyways, I don't want to get into the details here, but there's some kind of time period that it's these staked amounts are calculated and distributed. Okay. Inflation is initially set at 2.71%, which you mentioned, but it can be updated from time to time between 1 and 5%. Okay. In order to receive inflation Dapp tokens, DSPs must claim the tokens from the Dapp generator smart contract. the first time a DSP can claim Dapp tokens is possible only a block after Dapp tokens were first staked at on one of his service packages. Once the DSP claims the Dapp tokens, he will not be able to claim again until at least 24 hours have passed since his last claim, and so forth. So anyways, there's some details there. Doesn't seem to be, that's more procedural things. Any other, this is the Dapp network system model. It makes sense. I mean, generally it seems like, when I say it makes sense, I mean, I think we're understanding it correctly of how it works.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting that, like, say you are staking to a DSP and you might not need all that storage that you're staking for. Like, do they still need to provide that storage? Like, they must, if they do, like, will it be like a discount airline model where you oversell, you know, the amount of seats on the flight, because you know that, you know, people aren't going to actually require all the data that they're saying they will.
Oh yeah.
So do you have the storage ready for them to use?
So yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, so you're just saying that there might be some empty, like some availability beyond what people request, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, if you want to just support a DSP by making sure they get inflation, you, I assume, stake or stake to them. But then, yeah, they're not necessarily, you know, there could be terabytes and terabytes worth of data or storage that people have staked for, but are you really going to deliver that when the reality is they're only using, you know, 100 gigabytes currently? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. Well, you know, is it, and is, okay, so maybe the rewards have to be reduced in that case, where, like, if it's not being, you know, they're getting rewarded in excess of what they're actually needing to provide, right? So you know, if the incentives and the new token rewards are higher than the amount, then it should probably naturally go down the inflation, so that it's there's some sort of equilibrium. But yeah, I don't know, maybe it's hard to determine that, I guess, right? So you know, sometimes it's probably like the other, you know, the one other way of designing it is so that you're just paying, you know, whatever amount in dollars, like, of what you're actually using, right? Like Amazon's like that, you know, you're paying for actual use, right? At least, well, no, actually you still have to determine like what level of services you need, but you assume that you're kind of managing it yourself. It's not, you know, it's not necessarily based on resources, but it's based on the maximum resources you need, right? And you can manage it that way. So yeah, there's always some sort of like, I guess, underutilized resources, even in regular cloud services. So let's go through the token distribution mechanism here. 1 billion tokens, transferable. Distribution, 50% will be sold in 444 sales cycles over 333 days by 2 separate vendor contracts hosted by this token generator. There are 2 vendor smart contracts. So I don't know. There seems to be 2 separate vendor contracts. I don't know.
I believe one requires KYC and the other doesn't.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So I wonder if the KYC requiring contract will get less demand, and therefore you'll get a discount on the tokens by going through the KYC process.
That's kind of interesting, So it's kind of funny that they have like, a non-KYC and KYC system. Okay. It is kind of interesting. Anyways, so we'll think about that a little bit later. Let me see if there's any questions out there. Okay. I just want to make sure there's not any questions from the listeners here. Okay. Okay. So, anyways, there's just some procedural things here. For example, they have an example. Total EOS tokens received in the cycle, 10,000 tokens. Participant A sends an amount of EOS tokens. He gets a certain amount of Dapp tokens in the cycle. 10% of the Dapp tokens will be AirHODL. That's what Justin explained before. So I think Justin explains this 2-year holding period part of it. So any pioneer choosing to withdraw the AirHODL tokens before the end of said 2 years will only receive the vested portion.
So I wonder if you can use them while they're being AirHODLed. Perhaps they're like held in a contract where you actually can't even use them for 2 years until like they finish vesting.
What was your question? I was just reading. Sorry about that.
I'm just wondering if you actually can even use the tokens while they're being vested over that 2-year period. I know you can't, like, because it says you can't withdraw them, so that actually could mean that you can't use them or kind of sell them.
I assume so. So it's just really a way to keep people holding tokens for 2 years to get the full amount, it seems. And then, the explanation, you explained it well, where if you want to withdraw it early, you lose the rest of the portion that you would have gotten, and that gets distributed to everybody else, it seems. So 10% of the Dapp tokens were distributed to our launch partners, design partners, other partners, and advisors. Okay, 10% of the Dapp tokens will be designated towards grants and bounties. So, whenever you have these kinds of things with partners, and the founders essentially control this, right? So you say, okay, this is distributed to X, Y, Z, but ultimately it's still under your custody and control. You could give it to your insiders or whoever, right? So there's always a little bit of, you want to make sure that kind of on the worst case, if whoever controls the distributions still controls the tokens and still technically owns the tokens, right? Just a good way to think about it. From a skeptical point of view.
Definitely.
20% of the Dapp tokens will be distributed to founders. 6.5% unlocked. Of the Dapp tokens unlocked, and the rest continuously vested over 2 years. So it's a vesting. Get 6.5%, the rest over 2 years. So okay. So that's 30, 40, and 50%. That's pretty much it. So 50% is sold. The other 40% is controlled by the Liquidapps team and founders, advisors. And so that's 20% goes to them, and the other 20% they control kind of to founders. So okay, and then the 10% is the AirHODL. Okay, pretty good. In terms of like understanding, I think so. This is the founding team. A lot of let's see the founding team. This is more of a tokenomics thing, so we don't probably need to do too much about it. So. Here's the Bancor guy, AL. Galia is also with Bancor. Roadmap. Okay, we went through the roadmap summary. Okay, and then this risks are at the end. So, all right, we covered it. We covered a lot of it. Okay, so let's just go to the end and let's read the conclusion, just as a summary. Liquidapps is proud to announce a patent-pending innovation, the Dapp token, which will power an ecosystem of developer products and services. VRAM, the Dapp token's first use case, will enable blockchain developers to affordably develop unprecedented dApps with potential for mass user appeal by aiming to remove the financial barriers to entry and giving developers near unlimited access to data repositories. We believe VRAM will inspire a new wave of blockchain development. Liquidapps' intention is to inspire the community to build tools and services and empowers Dapp developers communities and help blockchain-based dApps become critical parts of everyday life worldwide. Okay, great. So that's pretty much it. So I think we covered it. You know, a lot of the tokenomics is right here, right? Just the AirHODL, like you mentioned earlier. Interesting way of keeping people holding for 2 years to earn their tokens. And then again, partners and grants to bounties in 20% to team, and then 50% of just the sale of the network. That's pretty much it. And then as we mentioned, the staking mechanism gives the inflation rewards to the DSPs. Any questions or any comments? I don't want to go into tech, but at least in the terms of the tokenomics, I think we covered it, right? Or covered?
Yeah, definitely. Is there more information on the staking? I don't know if you could Control F and type in staking or stake.
Oh, okay. Wait. So Pioneer holders can stake their vested Dapp tokens to Dapp service providers, and by doing so, those AirHODL tokens will not be considered withdrawn. So okay, so that answers the question about can you use it? Yeah, you can use it.
Yeah.
And these are Pioneer holders. So what is that?
Okay, everyone.
Yeah. Okay, everybody. Okay.
I mean, like everyone who had tokens at the snapshot. I'm not sure when the snapshot was done actually, but
okay. Yeah. Okay. The snap. Okay.
And I wonder, have they airdropped these Dapp tokens to the EOS main chain? I'm assuming, right?
So let's go back to that, I guess. Where was that AirHODL here? Pioneer holders. So every EOS token holder on block number 36,568,000. So that's probably in the future, or I don't know what block number are we on. Blocks. Check what block number we're on. We're on 44,880,075. So it was in the past 36. It's about, yeah, it was in the past. I don't know what date that is.
I'm just checking my my wallet and seeing if I've got my Dapp tokens yet.
Okay.
I can't see them. Pretty sure that it's just DAPP.
Now, can you check for a particular block number on a block explorer? I'm trying to look, but anyways, so that's fine.
I'm not sure if you can do that. That would be kind of handy.
So, all right, so cool. I think we pretty much covered it. I think they're doing a lot of great things. I think technologically, the tokenomics, it's interesting. I think we probably had to dig in a little bit deeper to see kind of how we think it's going to work, because I think the whole inflation and just trying to figure that out. I'm sure they've thought a lot about it. One other thing too is just as from a kind of a high level perspective, I think VRAM solutions are great. They came out with a patent pending solution, and I think that can help. I think some people probably are concerned about like technological capture too. I mean, like we're kind of support open source type systems where okay, well, they have this good technology, but maybe you can experiment doing something like a little bit better here and there, right? So that's kind of the way open source is kind of innovates. And so when you have kind of a little bit more proprietary systems where you have to use a network, I think there's always some concern about, okay, hey, like, am I going to be stuck with the system for the long run, right? And what does that mean? Or would I rather have something a little bit more open where there's not that kind of technological capture of where like, oh, this is the only thing I can use, right? Anyway, so the token models, like raising money, 50% is sold, and who gets the proceeds, right? Who gets the 50% public sale, right? It's
definitely.
So and you sold block one. I mean, they sold 100 EOS. It was really a public sale. It was not really an ICO where it was essentially like how I think of it is just more of a sale. They sold 1 billion tokens, and their revenue was 4 billion, right? And what people got out of it is the blockchain that exists today. And is this something similar where you're just selling this technology, this blockchain, and whatever amount that you receive, that's your revenue, But is that people, like, unfortunately for EOS, people have this misconception of it being like an ICO where you're funding it's like your money was going to be used to build out, but they didn't have to do anything. I think contractually, they just say your name is going to be on the snapshot, an ERC20 snapshot, and that's what you get. You get whatever, we don't even know if the chain's going to go up. It's like, that's why they say it could be worthless, these tokens, right? But a mainnet launched and people are using it. So I guess in that respect, it's okay. But as long as people understand what they're doing, I think it's okay, but you should be clear about that. So I have a 3 o'clock call. Sorry. I didn't realize. So really appreciate it, Justin. This is really fascinating. I think it's another good one. Like, we dug into this. I think we got a whole lot more clarity about this. Great to see. So
definitely.
Any last comments?
We'll have to get perhaps I'd love to get their perspective on kind of how it changes their life in terms of building apps. What kind of cool things they can do with it. Can they interact with a database? I think it mentioned SQL, so I wonder if it means you can literally have an off-chain database that you're interacting with. It could really speed up the pace of development on EOS, which is kind of really exciting.
Yeah. No, I'm excited about the technology, but yes, but it's also I have to take this call, so
that's okay.
So
cool.
See you guys, right. And I'll see you guys in a little bit, or next week. Take care, guys.
Catch you, everyone. Ciao.